Hello, and welcome to Hospitality and the Infinite Game, a podcast series focused on answering one simple question. What type of hospitality industry do we actually want to create? In these episodes, Michael and David discuss big ideas that might set the foundation for a different model of success. A model which would allow us to piece together a bold new way forward, where our businesses can thrive whilst making a positive impact on people, communities and the planet. We make no claims to have all the answers, far from it in fact, but we hope these conversations might just get you thinking. We are learning, and hopefully you'll learn with us. So join us. The game is afoot, and it's an infinite one.
Hey Michael, how are you doing? You winning at life today?
Yeah, I would say so. But like the rest of the industry we are part of, there's a bit of a limbo, isn't it? You feel a bit in limbo. I think I'm in different moods, hour for hour, what's happening, and I think that's not much far from, anyone else out there in our industry that is in the second lockdown. But there's hope, that the world is getting a better place. We have a vaccine, and as I said many times before, as long as you have coffee and great people around you, you're winning at life, aren't you? Because that's what it's all about.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that as the intro to this episode. So today we're at episode 5 in the series. So hopefully a little bit different today. The last 4 we've dealt with, I guess in order, the infinite game, the idea of long-term thinking and infinite mindedness, and then we dipped into the rather large subject of Doughnut Economics and trying to dig into an economic theory that would give us a different framework for operating within. And then we moved on to circular economy, another really massive set of ideas to look at how we can use our natural resources better, avoid pollution, regenerate natural systems, again looking at some big concepts and how they may boil down to be something we can act upon. And then last time it was No Planet B, so really digging into the facts, the data around climate change and sustainability, and just again looking what that might mean and how we can react as good citizens to that. But today we are going to look at something called B Corps, which is probably a term that people have been familiar with to a greater or lesser extent. I heard about it over the last couple of years, and it was kind of on the periphery of my knowledge for a while, and then a few people I knew spoke about it in more detail, and I kind of got drawn into looking at it. And I guess it offers a slightly more pragmatic, real-world way of assessing, is your company built in the right way, in an inverted commas good way, to build a better future. So it's going to be really interesting to dig into this, and I know you've been having a look, so tell me.
So yeah, there's an interesting thing with the B Corp thing, where I think it's similar like you. I think it was part of some kind of event where there was this company that was in there. They were selling, I think it's Toast is called, the beer company.
Oh, Toast Ale.
Yeah, Toast Ale. And they were talking about how they used waste bread to produce this. And then they talked about they were now very proud that they were in the process of certifying for a B Corp. And then they talked a bit about what a B Corp is. And that was my first touch point as well. But what I really like about what we're going to talk about today, because what we talked about up to now, even in my world, even though I like to read about complex books and stuff like that, and I understand sometimes, that you can't make that actionable. You can't implement things. And I'm all about how do you get the wheels on so you can start doing something. As an old McDonald's person, I like to make a roadmap and a plan for how we take, a vision and bring it to life. And maybe it's also my need as an integrator in this world. I want to make the change. I don't just want to talk about it. I want to make it. When I started looking into B Corp a couple of years ago, there's actually a framework here and a standard for how you actually can start making the world a better place. Because B Corps is this certification of company that sets a higher standard when it comes to the things we're talking about: social equality, environmental issues, still making profit, but using that profit to actually do good. And it's also about being public, transparent in the world we live in, that actually you are in the good of the public. You're not stealing data to do something bad with the public, or you're pouring chemicals into to rivers and the sea and so on. And again, it's a lot about they don't talk about we all have to become. It's not about not making profit. It's about how you get to the profit and how you use that profit to leave a better planet, communities, and people there. And the interesting thing is that now about 3,500 companies across the globe that are certified to this, more than 70 countries. So it's definitely scaling up rapidly. And I think it's also a wish for, see there's a lot of smaller entrepreneurial businesses that take that, and a lot of the new brands, especially in food that comes in, like Toast Ale, would be looking to do this as part of their journey. And I've touched it upon a bit myself around the Bear Kitchen. You've done it as well in your business, David. Yeah. We're going to come back to that in a second. But what they are saying, the principle of this is that the problems we have in society, I think we talked about the 17 UN goals of that needed to be solved in the world in another episode. They're actually saying that non-profits and governments can't do this on their own. They need help from the business world, and entrepreneurs has to be part of the solution. And I think already they are. There's a lot of great companies. An example of that, and my favorite one I like to talk about, is Patagonia. And Patagonia they are an example of what the B Corp structure is. So actually, if you want to learn and operate like, Patagonia, it's a very good thing to actually start the B Corp certification process, because actually they have probably learned a lot by looking at what Patagonia is, the clothing company. And then again, they are all about this. They are about this for decades. This is not a fad. There's something that were founded on the idea that we need, whatever we do, we need to have a positive impact on people, communities, and planet. But coming back to B Corps again, they are also they're trying to, within that network, it's a group of like-minded people that's all about what we've been talking about on the podcast up to now, and they're actually building this infrastructure for people actually to bounce back ideas and make it happen. Because a lot of what we had talked about in the other episodes can be a lot of wishy-washy, to be totally truth, and very difficult. But we thought it was important that we started up in the helicopter and then we built down to where B Corps is a way of working towards actually implementing some of these things into your business. And the B Corp process actually is not. A lot of people, when I talk with them, say, "Oh, it'd be really good from a marketing point of view, become a B Corp company." Well, I said to them, well, what's really valuable is this journey you go on, because the growth journey here, both understanding yourself and actually understanding, even if you thought, because when we looked at it before the pandemic, and this has been delayed a bit for pandemic because we've gone into survival mode in the Bear Kitchen, but we looked at it as I say, okay, this can actually help us building a better organization that actually can do sustainable growth. Because again, I think starting reflecting and answering these difficult questions as part of this certification process to hit that magic mark, I think it's 80 or 82 you need to hit to be certified on the score on 0 to 100. It's quite difficult.
We found it as well, and I think we could probably talk a little bit about the specifics of each of our experiences, because that would probably be quite helpful. But it's definitely worth noting that it is not easy, and it's not a kind of quick win marketing exercise to be signed up to. If you want to have a look, if anyone wants to have a look and really see how they would fare, what their current policies and company makeup, how that would score on the system, if you like, then if you go on the B Corp website, there's a free assessment, isn't there, which is like 1 to 3 hours.
It's like a score app.
Yeah, and you go through, and that will be the best place for anyone to start, and it will cover everything from how engaged your employees are in decision-making of policy, to gender equality, to the impact your work has, and avoiding negative environmental impact. So it covers a huge range of aspects. How did you get on when you were looking at the assessment? Where did you come on your first hit without changing anything?
It's quite as one of the founder of that business, we build it on all the intent we talked about now, but then you suddenly come from intent to practicality and actually proving you're doing it, because you know when you source your things right, you do seasonal. We talked about that last episode. You're doing something right, but you really don't understand. Coming back to Mike's idea around no plan B, is that how do you actually measure it? And that was our biggest blocker in that, was that we have all the right intent and we want to do the right thing, but how do we actually get into a day-to-day routine where we actually can measure that we're actually doing that every day? Because it's about the 1% you do every day, not about just claiming you want to do it. Exactly, how do you measure it? And that took us on. That's one of the biggest blocker, was actually how can we in the operation, in a food operation, on a day-to-day level, prove that we are acting like a B Corp in any kind of way, because it's so fast moving. So how do you change your operational processes? How do you look at where your kitchen is? Then you find out actually that building we're in, and we have leased a kitchen there, that's not very sustainable, because it's leaking, there's issues with water, there's many issues around that kitchen that are actually not helping us becoming a B Corp, because we can't deliver the results we want, because thereby we use too much energy in the kitchen compared to the amount we're producing. And then I thought also that we found out it was again, it's not just about being purpose driven. It's actually it's a mind shift, totally taking your operation model and actually looking at it and changing from the inside out. And we found out that we probably had quite a journey before we were there yet to get there. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't go on the journey. But actually we thought a bit like, it'll be a 3 months project. And then we'll be on, because we have all the right intent. But when we found out it's not an award show. It's changing your business thinking fundamentally. And at that point, we were already 2 years into how we run the business. So you actually go back to that and you peel the onion, the layers of the onion again, and start to rethink everything, how you do, or try to connect it together. And I think that, in itself, that's a massive, healthy process.
It's challenging, though.
It's challenging.
It really is challenging. And we kind of found a similar thing in that we did the initial assessment. Whether I say we, Brenda, my business partner, did all the heavy lifting on that. And as you say, you need to score 80 to achieve certification. And on a first run through of looking at our policies and the way we do things, we scored 39 out of 80. And it was like, ooh, that's remarkably low. Now when you look at it, there are aspects when you go through all of the points where you might say there are some easy wins. For example, if you haven't got a policy down in writing and shared it with your employees, then that doesn't count as ticking that off. So by looking at that, we felt we could probably get to about 60 points based on our the current way we work. There are things that we're a small company of 5 people, so there are things that are always going to be a challenge for us, and I think everyone will have their own ones. But for us, for example, you get points for if your board of directors is made up not just of men. Well, there's two directors in the company, and we're both men, so we're already going to lose points for that. But that's not something that's simple or easy or short term to change. So there are always going to be those kind of challenges. Our other challenge actually is a very specific one to architecture, because as soon as we put ourselves in as architects, there's a block of 10 questions that specifically relate to how many projects we have done in the last couple of years that relate to this LEED assessment system, which is an international sustainability assessment system similar to BREEAM or SCAR, but not one that we particularly engage with, because we think that SCAR is better for fit out and restaurants, and that's the journey that we're on. So we've got a bit of a technical challenge around how we fit within that, based on the fact that our sustainability journey is different to the way that it's been set out in that. So I think that's really interesting. I was wondering if you came up against anything similar where the framework didn't quite fit against where you were going, or did you just feel that they were all valid questions and they would just be naturally a case of it being molded over time to get to those principles?
I think when we looked at it actually early in the year, I can't remember actually there was any. I think there's one in catering now. I can't remember if it's Canada or France or something, so we're a catering business. So there was no one we actually could mirror us in, what we found a bit difficult. And I think one of the things we looked at, and I can't remember our score. You said you can remember your score. I think we were around the 30 something as well. It was like very far off, and I was thinking it was a bit like a blow. We thought, but this is
I'm a good person. Why am I not scoring?
We want to do the right thing here. Look at us. We're changing the way people eat. No, one of the things was what happens when we serve food in offices. So what happens when we leave that room with the food, and how can we measure that impact? Because it was about, we had to prove the journey of our food from the earth to the table, and what happens with it when we leave that room, because there will be leftovers sometimes.
Yeah.
How do you put a system in place that you make sure that your customers are doing the right thing? And again, technology can help, but as a startup, you only have the resources you have.
Exactly.
So again, it comes back to operational complexity of delivering food.
But does that then give you, I mean, it feels like both of us have got challenges technically around kind of hitting those criteria, but is that kind of motivation to set the roadmap of the company to meet those, because actually you think, hey, that's shown me something really important I hadn't really picked up on? That's a valid question. How do we measure that impact? Or do you feel that that's a sort of distraction from the core purpose, or you can make more impacts by focusing your energy elsewhere? I guess that's where it becomes really interesting, right? Is how you make those decisions.
The people that knows me, and I had half me as an ops director back in the days, know that I'm absolutely obsessed about food waste, because I think it's in a world with hunger, we can't throw out a lot of food. And there's probably people that can remember when I filled up the back room with food waste, poured it out on the floor, and made people look at that and asked them, how many people do you think we can feed with that? Just because of sloppiness in preparation. I think what it came into me when we got into that conversation, I thought, wow, what kind of impression do we actually know what they throw out? Do they maybe over-order because they don't want to run out? Have we actually helped them projecting what they need to order? Because maybe they think there's 80 people in the office, but there's only 60 on a Wednesday. So actually, that's how we went back on that and said, actually, just from a value point of view, as a good supplier, we should be able to help them predict much better. So again, that's where we went back and said, okay, we need to start mapping out. So what was difficult to do, but I think we got some of them on board with, can you tell us every time, take a picture of what's left and tell us how many people did eat today? And they, of course, they didn't have exact numbers. But again, we started adjusted. Actually, we started selling maybe 5 portion less, 10 portion left to some customers. You think that's bad business. Yeah, in the short term, that you think that's not your problem. But it is, because it's not about becoming a B Corp. It's about, again, if you set the business out to making impact and creating a better world, that's where you need to start making those small changes. So I think
it's also the signal you're giving to your customers. You're saving them money.
Yeah.
In a way, so there's a level of integrity and respect that you're going to be demonstrating, or you're going to demonstrate the integrity to get the respect. Because if you're clearly doing something that is not in your self-interest, then any customer is going to think, okay, I can trust these people. These are good people, and I want to support that. Yeah. Provided the food is also good and delivered well, and that your customer service is excellent, and all of the other stuff. So, but that's really interesting to hear how that's actually had a kind of, the questions come back to how you affect your journey. It's similar for us, although, as I say, the main challenge around the architectural metrics is a slightly bigger question for us that we're going to pick up with B Corp and just see if there's any flexibility in that, because it seems too specific and restrictive. I'd almost rather not call us an architect to avoid having to deal with that, because it kind of goes completely against the direction we think sustainability needs to go in terms of circular economy and things like that. But it's almost the way we sort of talking about it here, and the challenges we've got. I'm reminded a bit of the way people talk about democracy. It's a kind of terrible way to run society, but it's also the best one we've got. I wonder if B Corp is just a much better, clearer standard for running businesses, but almost inevitably is going to be imperfect and is going to have problems and challenges. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right again, because what you're committing to there as well is, as a small business, where you can think about big businesses. They have resources to audit things, because there's also the B Corp, as we saw it, is also not just getting over the line. It's a continuous improvement process. So how do you actually continue to improve yourself within that? Because the requirements, I guess, for B Corps will only go up.
Well, I understand from talking to a kind of a B Corp leader, one of the things with B Corps is you're recertified every 3 years, and you're expected in 3 years later you have to score better than you did on the first one. Otherwise, you won't get the B Corp certification, which is, to build in that requirement for constant improvement is, pretty demanding, and it kind of forces people to not be able to just go, right, okay, good, we've got the certification, let's kick back and stick the logo on our website and bandy it about a bit, and then crack on. It is a proper commitment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the other things we got out of it is that, do we actually know our so we thought we'd done our homework on our suppliers, but had we actually been out in the corners of those, actually, one of the things it did, and we should do that anyway from a content point of view, we actually went out at that part and said, okay, can we go and visit these suppliers and actually see the day-to-day action? And we went to the Foss Meadows chicken farm, went to Hot Medots and see how they did things. And actually that, it forced us, actually, because we want to go on that journey to build better relationship with our suppliers. And again, a positive outcome of a process. And we haven't finished it and we haven't become certified, but we'll definitely pick it up again, because again, it's the best framework I have seen that actually gives you as the leader an opportunity to communicate clearly to the organization what is it that we need to do to become impactful, and thereby if you want to be purpose and impactful as a business, something that gives meaning. Coming back to what we talked about last episode, you need to create an environment that gives people meaning to work in.
Yeah.
Something becomes very measurable. We can see are we winning or are we losing the game, because somebody had built up a point system.
Yeah.
Which I think, of course, it's very complex. If it was easy to do, everybody would become B Corp tomorrow and bit like the fair trade kind of thing. Then,
well, yeah, I know you mentioned that when we were talking around this episode. You had a concern, or there's a nagging concern in your head that B Corp, because it's growing in the mainstream, people are coming across it more, that it's going to become, its importance and its rigor will get diluted over time. And obviously, Jamie Oliver recently is one of the kind of biggest names who's managed to get certification, and as you said, it's for his media company rather than for any of the restaurants, which is great for the profile of B Corps. And as we know how rigorous that is, I'm sure they've had to go through all that process as thoroughly as everyone else. But is that your concern, that it gets diluted as the church gets broader, I suppose? People have similar concerns with the SRA in some ways, that when you get people like the mass restaurants, let's say Pizza Hut or something like joining, that because you want to affect larger change, you have to engage with the people in the mainstream who perhaps haven't got the same level of commitment to the same values. Is that something you see as a concern, or do you think that's just a natural journey of any organization?
It's a natural journey of the world, isn't it? Like, it's a bit like politics, isn't it? That you don't like all parties, or else why would you? Why would countries then have different governments, and different viewpoints? I think it's very important when it comes to this, that this can't be done by a group of outliers, as sometimes also called. We can't, it can't be the hippies that only can do that. We need the big boys taking part of this. Then we just need to make sure that if it becomes more and more mainstream, as you call it, there's a vigorous audit process in place. Because I think, any company that has audit places, things like, I come from a McDonald's background, we're all about audit. So you need to meet certain standards to keep your franchise. And I think, as sometimes when it goes too fast, and things, sometimes the rules are bended a bit because you just want the numbers to go up. And it's a bit like the growth thing we talked about in the first episode, Infinite Game. So I think that's just that's my worry with everything, and I think as long as it evolves in a what do you call it? I wouldn't call it slow way, but as long as it evolves in the right way and it's protected the core of the idea, because the idea is beautiful. So if that could be the way forward, this could maybe be one of the solutions. And they are so ahead on they know much more about all these things that we would have done on these episodes, and they put it into structure. So I think this is a great starting point. But I'm nervous about that. It could be diluted if you're not careful, and that's not because I'm not being certified and I feel it's unfair or anything. But I'm always nervous about that when things become mainstream, like fair trade. I don't put much. I don't think it tells me anything anymore as a consumer. It's just another sticker.
No, I think you're right. I mean, in a way, coming back to the assessment criteria, I mean, I was kind of reassured that it was so hard. I personally was kind of perversely quite glad that it was not going to be an easy thing for us to get through, and there's things we need to put in place and adjust. And I think, as you say, it's about the journey, isn't it? And I think I would definitely suggest that anyone who is interested or thinks that there is something intriguing about looking at how the business can work in a different way, or setting up businesses in a different way, then they should go check out the website, take the assessment, or if they're looking to start a company, have a look from the first instance of what they need to do to set up in the right way. I think you touched on it already, but there are no hospitality businesses in the UK who are
definitely not restaurant businesses.
Right.
Let me phrase it that way. So when I looked into it, I also there was no catering business, and I think it's some of the challenges I talked about. Even if you have a very small operation, how do we actually get, because we have so many moving parts. But I think, and coming back to what we talked on the last episode, we talked about AI and technology will help, all these, unmeasurable things we have in our environment, food and people that moves around, and very lively environment. Also, one of our biggest cost burdens is food and people cost. As we get better with technology, to use technology and I'm not saying technology should take over hospitality, but it should probably be in the center of the way you organize yourself as an organization and business, and actually be used to actually create, a business that not only make profit but also can make impact, because you have the headspace. The problem with trying to save the world sometimes is that you don't have the headspace, and that comes from that you are running after this beast that's called profit. But again, that's why maybe this can help you redesign your business and think differently about how you're getting. But there is a couple of companies to mention. There's also a present here in the UK. I think they're called Cogene, the French version of Pret. I don't know if I insulted anyone saying that, but they are like a grab and go. I think there's one down in the center of the city with Thameslink station. I think there's one in London, and then there's Big Mamas. We've heard about them going into the market very aggressively. They were very pro before the pandemic. I think they're still doing a lot of stuff around London. And then there's a Danish restaurant chain that's called Let's Sushi, which is also certified. I know them from Denmark. They're about 14 restaurants again, and they are very focused on where they get their fish from. Again, that's a very big part of when you go and look at theirs. Again, it's not doing overfishing and things like that. So there's people that has been with success has signed up to this, but not in the
so
UK.
Also worth people checking those out, just to see what they're doing and how they talk about themselves, and probably to get some pointers as well. Would definitely worth checking out those guys. And
I think there's a lot of restaurants without thinking about it, because we have to remember there's more than just energy and food in this. There's also how do you create a great work environment for your people, and there's a lot of operators out there that has great working environment, that's doing great above things, paying above the minimum wage and so on. Have great policies in the end for diversity and inclusion and stuff like that. So you will win on some areas, and some areas you will have a massive improvement work. So I think thinking about it's not just because we had talked a lot about on food and operation. There's the work environment. There's also social impact. There's people that's taking people from the street and into restaurants and giving them job and livelihoods. That's again social impact. That's also very important to remember. So it's important not to be scared about this, that you think it's all about sustainable food and how you're sourcing and all. It's actually a much more complex picture than that.
No, I think you're right, and I think it's maybe we should have even mentioned it right at the top of the episode. But it's important if people have heard B Corp and not really thought about it. It was probably an idea I had in my head too. Is that this isn't about being a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
This is about a business, but a better business, effectively, and that's why that framework is worth looking at, and actually probably segues us nicely into the next episode, which is dealing with the beast, as you mentioned it, profit. How do we square profit and purpose, and what even is purpose?
Yeah, because profit, no matter what, and even a person like me, I understand the profit trumps everything. But in my world, is how you get to profit and how you intend to use that profit afterward. It's a bit like how you use a tool, because profit is just a tool in my world.
Definitely. Okay, so next time, profit and purpose.
So that's the end for today. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that it sparked off an idea or two for you. We'll make sure to include any links and references in the show notes, but if you'd like to start a conversation, you can email michael@hospitalitymavericks.com or david@objectspaceplace.com. You can also find them roaming around on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect. Finally, if you're enjoying this series, please consider letting the world know by honouring us with a 5-star rating or even giving us a review. Okay, goodbye for now. Catch you next time for more discussions on hospitality and the infinite game.